Hi everybody, it's Ben, and today I want to talk about a special book called Sea Above, Sun Below by George Salis. Now, this is George's debut novel, and oftentimes with debut novels for authors, there's a lot of leeway given. There's aspects of the plot or some things that's like, it's you kind of there, the characters is a little too similar, or it's just a little boring. So first novels are always kind of given that leeway. However, there are a handful of novels that do have such great response just at the get-go. Books like A Naked Singularity or Smuggler's Bible, or even like The Recognitions, however, those are done by authors who are a bit older in their life. It's very rare to find authors who are young who write really good prose, like stuff like Frankenstein and The Monk. While like decent, have their problems with them, absolutely. But then you get authors like James Joyce and Thomas Pynchon seem just to write great mature literature. And for what I was seeing on circulating on Instagram was George was one of those authors. He actually got praise from authors like Alexander Thoreau, which blew my mind, which really made me put this book at the top of my reading list.
I have read Sea Above, Sun Below with great delight. I find it a cacophony of jubilation, and I love the boldness of Salis' character, his wit, and the dash of his writing.
He wrote it around the ages of 20 to 23, and to be honest, it is a very impressive book for juvenilia. George has a really beautiful and great grasp of language throughout this book, and especially in some sections compared to others where I just was reading and like, how did he write this at such a young age? He told me he read various books like Cloud Atlas and other ones that I can't remember at the moment, but which is not really an answer, to be completely honest, looking at the level of prose that's in this novel. Before we go any further, let's give a quick breakdown of the novel. It's about a skydiver named Adam, who is going to attempt a world record with the most amount of people joined hands in a skydive. And in a practice session, he dives down and he has a vision of an angel. And the book, much like again a lot of debut novels, is just an exploration of different characters associated with the main character. And so it's more like a vignette, a series of short stories, than one singular premise. But to be honest, that was more of my favorite stuff. Even stuff like Ulysses or Pynchon later on, or Robert Bolano. They had that tend to have that throughout their career. It's more like a frame narrative, and it kind of coalesces in a way that doesn't feel like a set of short stories. And George in this novel also accomplishes that, where it doesn't, like much like V, it doesn't feel like this is like just a bunch of random crap put together. There is a through line going throughout the novel, that being Adam, and seeing the various different characters that are associated to him as well. And George does a really smart thing where he hides relationships, in that you'll be reading somebody and then you won't figure out what the relation is to Adam or to friends or family members of Adam until near the end of the chapter. So while you're getting invested into this, you're kind of like, okay, what does this have to relate and whatnot? And then you find out like, oh, it's this person. I was like, oh, I didn't expect it to be this person. And just having that level of obfuscation really just kind of puts a drive to the novel. An example in my criticism of Smuggler's Bible, I was like, dude, what do these stories have to relate to the plot? But in my praise of something like Actors in the House, both McElroy books, it was more satisfying with that one, even though there were similarities in characters, because you saw the relation to the main characters throughout the novel, and just giving you that level of that tether. While with Smuggler's Bible, it was very tenuous and more lip service in some respects, so it just kind of made it like, why am I reading this? Now, much like Smuggler's Bible in a sense, there's a lot of echoes of characters in this novel, and that you'll see a lot of characters dealing with deaths of family members, deaths of loved ones, collapsing marriages, falling in love. And, I can just understand maybe some readers that might be a little repetitive, but in this novel, it reads really fast. And, you don't focus on one section too long, but you don't also feel like you wish you had more of that section. So even though I can see how it might be a criticism of some readers, it really wasn't a problem with me, and I really enjoyed all the characterizations. George has a really great ear for different age groups in this novel. He addresses all the way from one of my favorite sections of the story with Isaac, childhood. He addresses the lovers between two married couples. He addresses death between older couples, a son having to deal with with the mother's passing, also the dementia of old age. And he has a knack and an ear for all of these aspects. And he also is not afraid to add a little bit of what I call literary psychoanalysis, where some things like they might not necessarily happen in the real world, but they work really well for the novel. For example, a character going through so much alcoholism and so many different phases in his life, he doesn't even recognize his own daughter and whatnot. And it works really well in the novel with the world he establishes as well. Now, I do feel like that is a big thing to talk about with the novel, because there are some weird, wacky sections where mythology just really gets interposed on the reality of the world, especially in the Tessa segments like Hair and Sea, which is a pun for heresy. You'll see a lot of puns in this novel. And those are my favorite sections. Those where I feel like the writing really blows up and it's like, this is what people are getting at. But I want to address, before I get more into the prose a bit on that, I want to address the different layers of the world. It's obviously set in our world. However, there also is a layer of postmodernism humor to it. You see that a lot in the sections with Adam, and postmodernism humor. A great way, again, Naked Singularity, or the main source, David Foster Wallace's humor in Infinite Jest. You'll see a lot of that throughout the novel, especially in the skydiving sections. But then you have another interposed layer on top of that, being, I heard this comment in describing Gabriel Marquez's work, in that metaphor, there's no distinction between metaphor and reality. And you have that. Now, I do have some comments on that. But he'll have sections in the book where mythology or weird abstract notions of resurrection come into play, and the characters aren't too surprised by it. They'll just take it as is. And, those are the really fun meat of the section of the book, I personally feel like, where you have natal birth with fishes in it. You'll have a father trying to recreate Icarus with faux flying wings. Sections about revival, about resurrection, about certain characters resurrecting. Glass footprints on the beach leading to the ocean. All those sections are really great and really beautiful, and when George is able to spread his wings, so to say, and just really get into his literary and just his referential roots, you can really see where this man shines in writing, and his prose style is really beautiful and amazing in those sections. And in sections where he writes with Isaac, he really has a great ear for writing different age groups. With Isaac, focusing on things like hot chocolate during the rain, spending time with his mother. A great section was watching a movie on TV in his classroom. And then having a bully in that segment kind of bring him into the harsher realms of adult reality. And, a reality that was always kind of there, because after the bully comes in and tries to hurt him, he goes to an old man's house with all these weird, wacky objects in the front yard. And the man says, this is my woman who made these, or his wife, I forget. And he's like, I'm waiting for her to come back. And Isaac kind of gets a sense of that longing and loss that the old man has. And then he's able to compare that to his mother missing his, now just missing or deceased father. And just the fact that, the sadness that his mother has to deal with raising him as a single child. And, those elements are always there. The bully kind of brings that up for him by almost forcing him into the real world. Not in a positive way, in a very forceful, negative way. Now, there is an asymmetrical aspect to this novel. And a criticism that I do have is that the novel is a little top-heavy, in the sense that the postmodern sense of humor and the referential metaphors that come into the book that really kind of interlap over the world are mainly in the sections with Adam, which is kind of interesting. It doesn't really go on through the rest of the book. There's hints of it, there's little sections, but not as integrated as with the Adam segment. So throughout later of the novel, you're more just kind of reading stories, to be honest. There's not that, there's references to Catholicism to it, but it's more on the referential narration level, not on the actual interplay with the plot, but only in small, tiny segments. And that's a little disappointing for me, just because, again, I felt the literature in those segments was when he was at his best writing. And to see the lull and then it come up a little bit in the third part of the novel, but not really come back, it was a little disappointing. And I feel like if he would have focused on that more throughout the novel and had that interplay through all those different layers throughout the novel, this novel would have been incredible. Um, and not to say that it's bad or anything, and not to say that I didn't enjoy the just, down to earth human segments. I just thought he had something really special going on with the Adam segments, and it's kind of sad to see them more localized there. And not to say that it doesn't play an aspect like, the postmodernist humor is there when Isaac sees the man in the yard, and then it kind of like using postmodernist humor in a sense to almost kind of hint at adulthood in a sense for Isaac. However, it's just not as prevalent as you see in the Adam segments. Now, this book also has a plethora of biblical references through it. Obviously, with Adam, falling from the sky and being the first word and the first man you see in the novel, and then everything stemming out for him, like in the Bible, which is just a great parallel to like what third-person fiction is, and that the frame starts with a character, whether it be Slothrop, Stephen Debelis, or Leo Bloomfield in Joyce. It starts with a character, and it blooms out through all his interpersonal relationships through him, no matter how gentle it is to him as well. But this book does something interesting also, where it does lob a lot of criticism at religion, especially modern day, almost Methodist religion, Christianity in that sense, with a lot of ridiculous depictions of like preachers and like, letting characters die because it's not in God's plan for them to go to the hospital. Now, and it brings up an interesting question. Are those segments satire? Because you have all these biblical references and lead the plot of the book and the structure of the book, but it's also condemning it. And at the same time, it's a little tough to say. At some point, you can kind of say, yes, it is satire with the ridiculous depictions, but at the same time, you can say, no, it isn't satire, because what is the Bible if not a warning like, hey, don't worship false idols. Don't worship, these Baptist priests, these Methodist priests. And in the beginning of the novel, Adam has a vision of an angel that kind of drives him throughout the novel and clinches everything together. So it's not that George is demonizing biblical imagery throughout the novel, but it's more like he's demonizing just the current construct of organized religion. And through that, that's why I would be hesitant to say that this book satirizes religion in a respect, because the image of an angel almost correlates with the image of love throughout the novel, which is a major theme within this novel, and the ideation of a soul, which is very prevalent as well. And there's always a beauty and a mirth to that imagery. So long and short of it, Sea Above and Sun Below is a very strong, very beautiful debut novel. Somebody especially at 20, which is irritating. It reminds me of those musicians who say like, oh yeah, I've been doing stage performances since age 16. And it's like, what? But it's people like Tommy Emmanuel and whatnot. But it's just a really well done novel. And, looking at a little bit of what George's work is later on with his next book, Morphological Echoes, A Cosmic Mosaic, is that he does focus on a lot more on like the Hear and See the Tessa segments. He's really digging in mythology and doing that overlap of reality and mythology, wherein that there is no disconnection from the literary world and our existence. So if you enjoy this book, if you like the human aspects, if you like the Tessa segments, the next book is even going to be even greater, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I would definitely recommend this book. Please support this author. He really deserves it, and just really be on the lookout for what he's writing next. And those are my thoughts of Sea Above, Sun Below. Please check out the book. Links to where you can buy it will be in the description, and also I'll leave a link for his magazine where he reviews a lot of great authors and whatnot, and also has a great interview. He interviews Alexander Thoreau and Pastier just recently. So please check it out, please support him, and bam.